Welcome to Signal Post Daily, your human-curated, AI-delivered tech and AI news briefing for Monday, October 27th, 2025.
All right, what's on the agenda today?
We're starting off the show with nothing. And yes, I mean that literally.
Wait, what? John, didn't you get show notes?
Yes, Jess, notes in hand. Nothing, the tech company, has confirmed their launch date for the Nothing Phone 3A Lite on October 29th. So we're talking about a brand new entry-level smartphone from a company that's been making some waves in the mobile space.
Okay, so this is actually a real phone company I should know about?
Ha, fair question. Nothing is a UK-based tech startup founded by Carl Pei, who actually co-founded OnePlus before this. Remember the battery story from last week? They've been focusing on what they call minimalist design and transparent aesthetics. They've released a couple of flagship phones already, the Nothing Phone 1 and 2, plus they've got earbuds and other accessories.
So they're not brand new, but they're also not household names yet. How's the market actually responded to their phones so far?
That's the interesting part. They've built a cult following, especially in tech enthusiast circles. The transparent back design has been pretty distinctive, and they've positioned themselves as this kind of anti-establishment alternative to Samsung and Apple. But they're still very niche. We're not talking about mainstream adoption numbers here.
So the 3A Lite is their play to go more mainstream and accessible, price-wise?
Exactly. By launching an entry-level model, they're trying to expand beyond the premium segment where their flagship phones sit. Pre-orders are supposed to start right after the announcement on the 29th, so we'll know pretty quickly if there's real demand at a lower price point. This is kind of a make-or-break moment for them, because if they can capture the budget-conscious market, especially in emerging markets where price sensitivity is huge.
What specs are we talking about here? Is this just a cheaper phone with the same transparent aesthetic? Or are we talking about real compromises? Because there's a difference between strategic pricing and just watering down your brand.
That's a smart observation. From what we know, the 3A Lite maintains Nothing's design language, but with expected compromises on processor performance and camera quality. It's not like they're cutting corners on the philosophy, it's more about hardware components. The transparent back is still there, the minimalist UI is still there, but you're getting a mid-range processor instead of flagship-level performance.
So they're banking on design loyalists who want the nothing aesthetic, but at a price that won't break the bank.
Right. And that's actually a pretty smart market segmentation. There are people who love the design story Nothing is telling, but were priced out of the flagship models. This opens that door.
Moving on. Google's adding something called vibe coding to AI Studio. I have to ask, what on earth is vibe coding?
So, vibe coding is basically Google's attempt to make AI application development accessible without needing deep back-end knowledge. Think of it as AI Studio lets you build applications with prompts and natural language instead of traditional coding syntax. Imagine if you could just describe what you want your app to do in conversational language, and the AI handles all the heavy lifting behind the scenes.
But wait, can you actually deploy this for real work? Like, if I'm an accountant or a product manager, can I use this to build something I'd actually use at my company?
That's the million-dollar question, right? Google's positioning this as a tool for non-developers to create functional AI applications. There's actually a fascinating story here. An accountant started learning vibe coding specifically because they're worried about AI automation affecting their job. So they're upskilling preemptively. And that story kind of captures this moment we're in, where people are realizing they need to understand these tools to stay relevant.
Wait, that's kind of ironic. They're learning to use AI to avoid being replaced by AI?
I mean, yeah, but honestly, it speaks to this anxiety we're all feeling. The bigger question is whether vibe coding outputs are production ready or if they're more like prototypes. Google hasn't been super transparent about real-world deployment cases yet.
So it's still early days, and we don't really know if this is a game changer or more of a proof of concept. Because I feel like there's a big difference between I built something cool in an afternoon and I built something my company can rely on for critical operations.
Exactly right. That's the credibility gap we're in with a lot of these no-code AI tools. The accountant story is inspiring, but we need to see actual case studies. Like, here's a business that used vibe coding to automate workflow X, and here's the impact on their operations. Without that, it's hard to know if this is legitimately useful or just another tool that looks great in a demo.
And I guess the other thing that bugs me is security and governance. If non-technical people are building applications, who's reviewing the code? Who's making sure there aren't vulnerabilities or compliance issues?
That's a fair question. I think Google would argue that vibe coding is designed with guardrails built in, but you're right to be skeptical about that. It's the kind of thing that probably works great for internal tools or prototypes, but enterprise deployment is a whole different conversation. And we had some of that conversation yesterday. Check out our Sunday discussion, episode 6. That included discussions about enterprise adoption of AI.
Yeah, the Sunday discussion was pretty good. Shifting gears completely, TikTok. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is saying the U.S.-China TikTok deal is going to be finalized on Thursday. Do we actually believe this is happening this time?
You know, this has been dragging on for years at this point. There's a lot of political theater around TikTok, and deadlines keep getting pushed. But according to Bessent, this finalization is supposed to coincide with a meeting between President Trump and President Xi Jinping, which does add some weight to it. I mean, if you're coordinating a major bilateral agreement, you want it tied to a high-level diplomatic moment.
But here's what bugs me about this. We've heard it's getting finalized before. What's actually being finalized? Is ByteDance selling TikTok? Are they getting a special exemption? Is there a joint venture? Nobody ever explains the actual deal structure, and I'm starting to think that's because nobody's agreed on one yet.
That's a fair question. The reporting has been pretty vague. And honestly, I think that's intentional. Both sides are probably still negotiating the exact terms. What we know is there's been discussion about some kind of restructuring or sale that would address U.S. national security concerns. But the devil's in the details.
So essentially, this could fall apart again next week, or even Thursday after the announcement?
It absolutely could. But the fact that it's tied to a Trump-Xi meeting suggests there's real diplomatic effort behind this one. That said, I'd wait until Thursday actually passes before popping any champagne. Plus, even if they announce something, implementing it is going to take months. These things are complicated.
Fair point. And hey, listeners, you can actually follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Red Mesa Studios if you want to see what we're up to and stay in the loop on these kinds of stories. Last story. OpenAI is apparently working on an AI music generation tool. Is there anything OpenAI isn't trying to do at this point?
I know, right? They're working with students from Juilliard to train this model, which is interesting from a training data perspective. But this puts them directly in competition with Suno, which has already built real momentum in AI music generation and has a really passionate user base.
Okay, help me out with this one. OpenAI is already stretched across social networks, video generation, image generation, coding, reasoning. Now music? Are they diluting their offerings by being a jack of all trades? Like, remember when that used to be a bad thing?
That's the critique, yeah, and it's valid. They're essentially saying we can do everything. But I think their argument would be that with enough scale and resources, they can actually execute on multiple fronts at once. Plus, having an integrated ecosystem where you can do text, images, music, and code all in one place has some genuine value.
But can they, though? Suno has been laser-focused on music for years, and they've built something genuinely impressive. Does OpenAI's music tool need to be groundbreaking, or is it just table stakes for them to offer it?
Honestly, I think it's partially table stakes. They don't want to be left out of any emerging category. But the real question is execution. If they can build something that competes with Suno's quality while integrating it into their ecosystem, that's powerful. If it's mediocre, it just clutters their product lineup and frustrates users who are trying to figure out which tool to use.
And we won't know until they actually release it. Juilliard students helping with training is interesting, though. That suggests they're serious about getting the music theory and compositional aspects right, not just generating noise. You don't call in conservatory students unless you're thinking about actual musicality.
Exactly. Using real musicians and composers in training data could give them an edge, but again, we're in wait-and-see territory. The music generation space is moving really fast right now, and early mover advantage matters. Speaking of music, did you know our theme music was created with Suno?
Get out! That's great! So folks, if you've got thoughts on any of these stories, or if you want to tell us whether OpenAI's music tool will actually threaten Suno, or if you think Nothing's phone strategy will work, send your comments and questions to feedback@signalpostdaily.com. We'd love to hear what you're thinking.
Thank you, friends, for tuning in to Signal Post Daily. We'll be back tomorrow with more tech and AI news analysis.
Bye-bye.